In the sun-baked dirt of Zorah, a Danite named Manoah stands beside his barren wife and offers a freshly slaughtered goat to a nameless stranger. The visitor has just prophesied the impossible birth of a son whose head will never feel the edge of a razor. Yet this traveler carries no provisions, claims no tribe, and wears no earthly markers. Manoah, bound by the ancient laws of the desert, simply wants to feed a weary prophet before the sun drops. The stranger abruptly rejects the roasted meat, demanding instead that the animal be burned entirely to ashes. See the scene. The dust is hot. The couple is unnerved, desperate to anchor this bizarre encounter in the familiar, safe customs of breaking bread and sharing meat. The sudden refusal of the meal and the demand for a fire sacrifice point to an entity operating under rules entirely alien to human flesh. Listen to the canonical text. Judges chapter 13, verses 15 and 16 inches, the King James Version. And Manoah said unto the angel of the Lord, I pray thee, let us detain thee, until we shall have made ready a kid for thee. And the angel of the Lord said unto Manoah, Though thou detain me, I will not eat of thy bread. And if thou wilt offer a burnt offering, thou must offer it unto the Lord. For Manoah knew not that he was an angel of the Lord. Stop right there. Manoah does not know what is standing in his field. Earlier in the chapter, his wife called the visitor an Ish Elohim, a man of God. Though she noted his countenance was terrifying, Manoah thinks he is negotiating with a mortal. He thinks he is talking to a wandering ascetic who requires physical sustenance to survive the brutal Judean wilderness. But the text is keeping a secret from the farmer. To understand the vast, unseen reality, pressing down on this tiny patch of dirt, we have to look through the lens of the ancients. Targum Jonathan, the ancient Aramaic paraphrase of the Hebrew Bible, records how first-century Jewish scholars translated and understood these chilling encounters. The Targum does not view this visitor as a mere human messenger with a strict dietary boundary. The ancient scholars understood that heavenly beings do not consume the harvest of the cursed ground. They do not eat earthly bread. Picture it. The young goat is waiting. The knives are drawn. Manoah stands ready to prepare the kid, entirely unaware that the being looking back at him possesses no human biology. The visitor forces a hard, immediate pivot. He turns a shared horizontal meal of human fellowship into a stark, vertical ritual of blood and flame. The goat was meant to be a simple bridge of hospitality between two men in a dusty field. Instead, it is about to become a terrifying doorway between two dimensions. Manoah, still operating strictly under earthly etiquette, pushes the conversation forward. If he cannot feed the man to show his gratitude, he will at least honor him with words. He asks for a basic, universal human identifier. He asks for a name. Manoah believes a name will let him properly honor a mortal prophet once the promised child is finally born. But the entity in the field is about to answer with a single Hebrew word that fractures everything Manoah understands about reality. What does it mean when a messenger from the divine council refuses to be named? Manoah stands his ground in the hot dust of Zorah, listening to the stranger's impossible demand. The roasted meat has been definitively refused. The visitor requires a burnt offering to the Lord, yet refuses to explain who exactly is standing in the field making the request. Manoah, a man bound by the earth and its seasons, tries one last time to pull this terrifying encounter back into the realm of human logic. He wants a label. Listen to Judges chapter 13, verse 17 inches, the King James Version. And Manoah said unto the angel of the Lord, What is thy name, that when thy sayings come to pass, we may do thee honor? He is asking for basic desert etiquette. He wants to know who to credit when his barren wife finally holds a living son. but the response he receives shatters the boundary between the physical dirt and the infinite unseen. Judges 13:18. And the angel of the Lord said unto him, Why askest thou thus after my name, seeing it is secret? Stop right there. Look closely at that final word in the English translation. Secret. It sounds defensive. It sounds as though the visitor is simply withholding a piece of information, like an earthly scout refusing to hand over his military credentials. But pull back the English text and look at the raw Hebrew beneath it. The word spoken in the field is peli. Read that again. Peli. This is not a word for classified or hidden information. Peli means incomprehensible. It translates to a reality so vast, so overwhelmingly beyond human bandwidth, that a mortal mind would physically break trying to process it. The visitor is not saying, I will not tell you. The visitor is saying, you do not have the architecture to hear it. Sit with that. The unslaughtered goat bleats in the background. The heavy stones of the field wait to be stacked into a bloody altar. And right in the middle of this mundane agricultural setting, Manoah realizes he is interrogating a fracture in reality. Where else does this specific, terrifying root word show up in the canonical text? Leave the fields of Zorah and fast forward through the centuries to the scroll of the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and his name shall be called Wonderful. That word wonderful is Pele, springing from the exact same Hebrew root, same divine weight. The being standing before Manoah is carrying a linguistic marker reserved for the prophesied Messiah, the physical manifestation of the Most High. I hold this as one reading, a theological bridge built by generations of careful scholars, not the final word. But it forces you to look at the visitor in the field with a new kind of dread. Manoah thinks he is asking for a common angelic designation. He expects a simple name, something manageable and familiar. But names are power. In the ancient Near East, to know the true name of a spirit was to hold leverage over it. To name a thing was to define its limits. Manoah is unintentionally trying to bind an entity that has no edges, no limits, and no mortal equal. The visitor shuts the inquiry down with a single, impenetrable wall of language. Peli. Watch what the text does here. The entity offers no substitute. It does not soften the refusal. It leaves Manoah staring into a theological abyss, holding the rope of a goat that must now become blood and ash. The name cannot be spoken in this field. Manoah now has a sacrifice demanded by an entity who wears the dust of a man but claims the incomprehensible title of God. But there is a much darker reason why heavenly beings walking the earth in this era refuse to hand their true names over to men. What catastrophic event in the days before the flood made the sharing of angelic names a crime against heaven itself? The unslaughtered goat bleats against the heavy silence of the Judean hillside. Manoah waits for a simple name to attach to this stranger, completely unaware that his polite question brushes against a catastrophic crime from the days before the flood. Picture it. Long before the floodwaters ever broke the crust of the earth, 200 angelic beings descended upon the physical rocks of Mount Hermon. They were not carrying holy mandates from the divine throne. They were carrying mutiny. First Enoch, an ancient Jewish writing preserved whole in the Ethiopian Bible, records the exact details of this prehistoric rebellion. The text tells us these fallen watchers did not just take human wives and corrupt the mortal bloodline. They traded the highly classified mechanics of the spiritual realm for fleshly veneration. They taught humanity the arts of metallurgy, the cutting of roots, the reading of stars, and the forging of iron weapons. But the most dangerous currency they handed over to mortals was linguistic. They gave away their celestial names. I offer it as that. One tradition's record of a shattered ancient boundary. But it reveals exactly how the ancient Hebrew mind understood the terrifying mechanics of the supernatural. In the ancient Near East, when an immortal entity gives a mortal its true name, it establishes a corrupt, unauthorized chain of command. A name is a summons. A name is a leash. The pre-flood Earth was drowned precisely because humanity possessed spiritual access codes they were never designed to hold. Now pull that dark history back into the sun-baked dirt of Judges 13. Manoah thinks he is offering a polite desert formality. He thinks he is honoring a human prophet. But the being standing across from him is fiercely guarding the absolute separation between the throne room and the soil. Watch what the text does. The entity uses the word Peli to slam the door shut. He is drawing a definitive line in the sand between a holy messenger of the Most High and the corrupt watchers who trafficked in illicit divine secrets. This refusal is a strict pattern of the holy ones. Turn back into the canonical text, to the book of Genesis, chapter 32, verse 29. When Jacob wrestles a divine being in the dust of Peniel, Jacob demands a blessing and a name, and the entity replies with the exact same defensive wall. And he said, "Wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name?" Read that again. The holy ones do not hand over their divine markers. Holy angels do not trade their identities for earthly leverage, and they certainly do not trade them for roasted goat meat. They do not allow themselves to be summoned, categorized, or venerated by men whose breath is in their nostrils. The refusal of the name in the fields of Zorah is not an act of hostility. It is an act of extreme mercy, protecting Manoah from wielding a vocabulary that would burn him alive from the inside out. But words are only the beginning of this terrifying disruption. The name has been perfectly withheld, and the boundaries of heaven remain intact. Manoah has survived his own dangerous question, but the physical reality of the field is still waiting for its blood. Because while the incomprehensible name cannot be spoken, the unlit altar is still sitting in the dirt. Manoah has been denied the name, but he is still holding the knife and the demanded sacrifice. The ancient Aramaic scholars saw exactly what was shifting in this moment, recording a terrifying change in the hierarchy of the visitor. What did the translators of the Targum know about this specific angel that our English Bible leaves entirely hidden in the dust? Manoah turns his back on the stranger and walks toward a heavy, unhewn stone resting in the field. The offer of a meal is officially dead. The farmer is now forced to act as a priest. He slaughters the young goat, drains the blood against the dirt, and lays the meat across the cold rock. Picture it. There is no temple here. There is no bronze altar, no holy fire carefully tended by Levites. It is just a man, his terrified wife, a bleeding animal, and a visitor who wears the incomprehensible name of the Most High. Listen to the canonical text. Judges chapter 13, verse 19 inches, the King James Version. So Manoah took a kid with a meat offering, and offered it upon a rock unto the Lord. And the angel did wondrously. And Manoah and his wife looked on. Stop right there. Look closely at the phrase, did wondrously. In English, it sounds like a vague magic trick, a burst of unexplained spectacle. But strip away the translation and look at the raw Hebrew beneath it. The verb used here is mafli. It is the exact same root word as Peli, the secret, incomprehensible name the visitor claimed just one verse prior. The entity is not performing a random miracle. He is physically manifesting his true nature. He is acting out his name. Same root, same divine weight, but who exactly is doing this? The English Bible uses the phrase, the angel of the Lord. To a modern reader, an angel is a winged messenger, a subordinate created to run errands. The ancient readers did not see it that way. The scholars who translated the Hebrew Bible into Aramaic for the synagogues of the first century understood they were dealing with a far more terrifying hierarchy. Targum Jonathan reads these encounters with the angel of the Lord not as mere visitations, but as direct intersections with the divine. The ancient Aramaic framework recognizes that this specific title Malach, YHWH, often points to a localized, physical manifestation of the Lord himself, or at the very least, an entity of the absolute highest rank. The Book of Jubilees gives us the exact architecture for this. The text describes an elite, terrifying class of entities known as the angels of the presence. These beings do not walk the earth handing out messages. They minister directly, permanently, inside the unapproachable fire of the heavenly throne room. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. But it reveals how the ancient Jewish mind categorized the supernatural being standing in the dirt of Zorah. An angel of the presence is entirely composed of and sustained by holy fire. Sit with that. Manoah has placed the meat on the stone. But look at the text of verse 19 again. Manoah offers the kid upon the rock. Notice what the canonical text does not say. It never mentions Manoah striking a flint. It never mentions him bringing a coal or a torch to light the sacrifice. The altar is fully prepared, bleeding, but it is entirely cold. Manoah is waiting for the fire. He expects to initiate the burn himself, using the dry brush of the Judean wilderness. But an entity of this rank, an angel of the presence who carries the incomprehensible name of God, does not consume earthly meat, and he does not require earthly fire. The visitor is about to bypass human physics entirely. The cold rock is about to become a blinding pillar of heat, but the flame will not come from Manoah's hands. Where does a holy fire originate when there is no spark struck in the physical world? The sun is dropping low over the fields of Zorah. Manoah steps back from the heavy, unhewn stone, his hands stained with the blood of the young goat. The meat is laid bare against the cold rock. He has done exactly as the stranger commanded, turning a hospitable meal into a stark wilderness sacrifice. But there is a glaring mechanical problem in this field. Manoah has no fire. See the scene. He is a farmer standing in the dirt, expecting to run back to his tent to fetch a burning coal from his hearth. But the entity standing opposite the altar does not wait for human tools. He does not require the friction of flint or the dry brush of the valley. To understand the physics of what happens next, look backward in the same canonical book. Just a few chapters earlier, in Judges 6, another man named Gideon placed goat meat on a cold rock for the exact same angel of the Lord. In that field in Ophrah, the entity simply touched the rock with the tip of his staff, and fire physically erupted from the stone itself. Same entity, same mechanics. The fire of divine acceptance in these intimate encounters is not built by mortal hands. It is summoned directly out of the architecture of the earth. The rock itself weaponizes against the cold. Listen to Judges chapter 13, verse 20 inches, the King James Version. For it came to pass, when the flame went up toward heaven from off the altar. Stop right there. Look at the phrase "went up." The Hebrew word used here is Allah. It is the exact linguistic root for the word burnt offering, which is olah. In the ancient Hebrew mind, a burnt offering was not simply a meal destroyed by heat. It was an ascension. The fire was a physical elevator, translating the heavy, earthly flesh of the goat into a lighter, smoke-bound state that could breach the boundary of the heavenly realm. I offer it as that, one ancient understanding of the altar. It was not merely a place of destruction, but a place of authorized border crossing. The rock in Zorah is no longer cold. It is blindingly hot. A violent pillar of fire is now roaring upward. ripping the twilight open, entirely consuming the meat Manoah had intended for a peaceful dinner. The farmer and his wife fall back from the heat, shielding their faces from the sudden eruption of a holy, unearthly flame. The offering is ascending, but as the smoke begins to spiral violently toward the darkening Judean sky, Manoah realizes the stranger is not retreating from the heat. A mortal man would stagger backward to protect his flesh from the blistering wind of the fire. The entity who wears the incomprehensible name of the Most High does not step back. He steps forward. The altar has been ignited, and the blood is burning, but the sacrifice is not the only thing preparing. To leave the dirt of Zorah, because the being who refused to eat the meat is about to do something absolutely impossible with the flame. What happens when an angel of the presence decides it is time to go home? The heat coming off the unhewn stone in Zorah is absolute. The young goat is gone, instantly vaporized by a violent pillar of fire that Manoah never lit. Its blood and meat turned entirely to ash and ascending smoke. Manoah and his wife are shielding their faces, backing away from the blinding light. But the visitor who refused to eat their bread does not retreat from the heat. See the scene. The entity steps directly into the core of the roaring flame. A biological creature, bound by human physics and fragile skin, would turn instantly to carbon inside that heat. But the stranger moving into the fire is not biological, and he is no longer pretending to be a man. Listen to the canonical text. Judges, chapter 13, verse 20 inches, the King James Version. For it came to pass, when the flame went up toward heaven from off the altar, that the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. And Manoah and his wife looked on it, and fell on their faces to the ground. Stop right there. Look deeply at the mechanics of this departure. To this being, the fire is not an incinerator. The fire is a vehicle. Cross-reference this impossible physics with the poetry of the Hebrew canonical text. Turn to Psalm 104, verse 4, which describes the unseen architecture of the Lord's throne room, who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire, fire returning to fire. The entity stepping into the altar is stepping back into his native element. The Book of Jubilees categorizes these highest-ranking entities exactly this way, not as beings of soft light, but as entities of burning heat, who minister inside the lethal flames of the heavenly council. I hold this as one reading, one careful bridge between an apocryphal book and a chapter firmly inside our Bible. But it perfectly explains why the visitor could not consume the roasted goat in the dirt. He did not need to eat the sacrifice. He needed to ride its destruction back through the veil. Now look at the raw Hebrew word the text uses for the flame roaring off this rock. The word is lahab. This is not the common word for a gentle hearth fire or a warming campfire. Lahab carries a terrifying, specific edge in the ancient text. It is the exact same Hebrew word used in Genesis chapter 3, verse 24, to describe the flaming sword placed at the east of Eden to keep fallen humanity locked out of paradise. Same word, same terrifying barrier. The lahab is a lethal boundary to mortal flesh. It is a locked door. But for an angel of the presence, an entity whose withheld name is Pele, the lahab is an open gateway. Picture it. The heavy, earthly flesh of the goat has been translated into an ascending column of smoke. In the ancient Hebrew mindset, the smoke of an olah, a burnt offering, creates a temporary, vertical corridor that pierces the firmament. The entity ascends vertically, perfectly synchronized with the rising smoke. Watch what the text does. The angel does not spread physical wings and fly away into the Judean clouds like a bird. He dematerializes into the architecture of the flame itself. He uses the violent heat as a doorway out of our three-dimensional reality, slipping back into the unseen realm before the eyes of the terrified farmers. The barrier between the dirt of Zorah and the highest heaven was temporarily torn open by the blood of the goat, and now the doorway is closing. Manoah and his wife collapse. The text says they fall on their faces to the ground, pressing their heads into the dirt as the flame dies and the evening wind scatters the ashes. The visitor is gone. The rock is blackened and empty. But the silence that falls over the field is heavier than the blinding heat. Because as Manoah presses his face into the soil, he realizes the terrifying math of what he has just survived. There was an absolute law governing ancient Israel when it came to close proximity encounters with the unfiltered divine. What single lethal rule suddenly makes Manoah realize he and his wife are about to die in the dirt? The twilight wind moves across the blackened rock in Zorah. Manoah and his wife are pressed flat into the dirt, their faces hidden in the dust, bracing for the sudden end of their lives. The roaring pillar of heat has vanished. The entity who used the flame as a doorway is gone. But Manoah does not stand up. He is waiting for his heart to stop beating. See the terror. He is a farmer who knows the ancient laws of his people. He knows the absolute, lethal mathematics of what happens when a biological creature is exposed to the unfiltered reality of the unseen realm. Listen to the canonical text, Judges chapter 13, verses 21 and 22 inches, the King James Version. But the angel of the Lord did no more appear to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was an angel of the Lord. And Manoah said unto his wife, We shall surely die, because we have seen God. Stop right there. Look at the specific word Manoah uses in the Hebrew text. He does not say, We have seen a messenger. He says, We have seen Elohim. He realizes the being who refused his roasted goat, the being who claimed the incomprehensible name Peli, was not a subordinate angel. Cross-reference his terror with the foundational law given to Moses in the book of Exodus, chapter 33, verse 20. Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live. Manoah is doing the math in the dirt. He interrogated an angel of the presence. He demanded a name from the localized manifestation of Yahweh. He stood inches from a being composed entirely of holy fire. By every ancient metric of the Israelite camp, his flesh should be melting off his bones. I offer it as that. One ancient tradition's understanding of the absolute danger of the divine boundary. To touch the realm of the Watchers, the angels, or the Most High without a shield of blood is a death sentence. But the death never comes. The silence of the field stretches out. The ashes of the young goat blow across Manoah's hands. It is his wife, the unnamed woman who first recognized the terrifying countenance of the visitor, who breaks the dread with pure, cold theological logic. Judges 13:23. But his wife said unto him, If the Lord were pleased to kill us, he would not have received a burnt offering and a meat offering at our hands, neither would he have shewed us all these things, nor would as at this time have told us such things as these. Look at the logic. She perfectly understands the mechanics of the Lahab, the flaming barrier. If the entity wanted them dead, for their unauthorized proximity, the fire that erupted from the rock would have consumed the farmers, not the goat. The altar worked. The blood of the kid acted as their physical shield. The sacrifice absorbed the lethal friction of the divine intersection, allowing the visitor to return to the heavenly throne room without taking their lives as collateral. Manoah slowly pulls his face out of the dirt. He is breathing. The visitor has returned to the unseen realm, leaving his incomprehensible name hidden behind the veil. But the field of Zorah is no longer just a piece of agricultural land. It is ground zero for a prophesied birth. The terror begins to fade into the Judean night, leaving only the charred stone and the impossible promise of a son. But the incomprehensible name, withheld in the field, is about to shadow the child who is coming. What happens when the violent, secret fire of the altar is born into mortal flesh? Go back now to the field where this film began. the sun-baked dirt of Zora, a Danite and his barren wife, standing beside a heavy, unhewn stone. You have read this chapter 100 times as a simple prologue to the story of a Sunday school strongman, but tonight, the dirt is different. The goat that was meant for a shared, horizontal meal of human fellowship is gone, reduced entirely to white ash on a blackened altar. The visitor, who claimed no earthly tribe and refused to eat the bread, has vanished back through the veil. The field is quiet. But the entity did not leave Manoah and his wife with an empty rock. He left them with a linguistic shadow, the withheld name, Peli, incomprehensible. Listen to how the canonical text closes this encounter. Judges chapter 13, verse 24 inches, the King James Version. And the woman bare a son, and called his name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. Stop right there. Look at the trajectory of the child born from this impossible intersection. Samson will not be a normal judge of Israel. He will not lead armies. He will not sit at the city gates rendering legal decisions. He will operate exactly like the flame that erupted from the rock in his parents' field. Uncontrollable, solitary, a walking, lethal manifestation of divine chaos against the Philistine occupation. Remember the verb used for the angel in verse 19. He did wondrously. He was Mafli. He physically acted out his terrifying secret name. Samson's entire life will be a violent echo of that exact incomprehensible fire. The burning foxes in the grain fields, the slaughtered thousands at Lehi, the collapsing pillars of the temple of Dagon. Samson defies all human logic, human restraint, and human categorization. He is a biological vessel carrying the aftershock of an angel of the presence. Same fire, same chaos. I hold this as one reading, not the final word. I am not handing you doctrine. I am handing you the ancient theological framework and letting you sit with the parallel. The text demands we look at the angel and the child as mirroring forces. The visitor was a localized breach of the divine into the physical dirt. The son will be a localized breach of divine judgment into the Philistine Empire. But the canonical text does not give us the full mechanics of this transfer. It tells us in the final verse of the chapter that the Spirit of the Lord began to move Samson at times in the camp of Dan. But what exactly passed between the roaring flame of the ascending entity and the womb of the barren woman standing inches from the heat? We do not fully know. The text goes silent. The desert is still holding the rest. If you made it to the ashes of Zora with me, comment the word "watched" below. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep reading the biblical text without the modern, sanitized filters that strip the terror out of the ancient encounters. And send this video to one person who loves the Book of Judges but has never heard the translation of the withheld name in the field. Some altars are not meant to bring us comfort. They are built to burn our earthly logic to the ground.